Happy time zones, everyone. This is Sako and the Moon, a podcast where two horror writers talk about craft and media. Today, we're interviewing avid role player Kyri, just Kyri, also known as Katchin Studios. I am Sako Toomey. I'm one of the horror writers. I am 3 times published and I am a illustrator, graphic designer, and photographer outside of the DC area. Based out of the DC area. English, I know it.
I only pretend to know English.
Yeah, and my co-host.
Me, the Moon. I am Dewan L. Hearn, more affectionately known as the Moon. I am a horror writer, independently published. I'm a film writer, filmmaker, podcaster. I do the things because I like doing the things.
Yes, doing all the things. I wear all the hats as well. That's the thing about being self-published horror writers. I should mention that.
I should make a hat that just says, "This counts as all the hats."
This counts as all the hats. That's a good idea.
Work on that.
Published horror writers. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna bring her on the screen. Ta-da!
Hello.
Who the heck are you?
Hi, I'm Kyri. I'm also known as Katchin of Katchin Studios. I am an avid role player, and I was formerly known as a professional illustrator and commission-based artist.
Sweet. We'll talk a little bit about that as well, because it's mostly authors that are probably listening to our podcast and are always looking for artists to draw their characters. I assume that's your specialization is drawing characters.
That is my specialization. I'm also a budding fantasy and horror author.
Wonderful.
But I am not published.
That is okay. You are a writer.
It's the importance of the word "yet" that got me through everything I do. Is remembering the word
yet. Mm-hmm. It's a good word.
That's what the hat will say. The hat will say "yet."
Yet. How long have you been playing and or running games?
Jeez. Longer than I care to admit. I will say more than 30 years.
More than 30 years. So you have seen the evolution of gaming as it has changed over the last couple decades, huh?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it has changed quite a bit over the last couple of decades.
So then let me ask you, because I am not avid in role-playing games at all. So let me ask more for clarification. When we talk about role-playing games, what exactly are we talking about? It's more than just D&D. I know this. So for people like me who don't know that as well, what exactly are we talking about?
Role-playing games are, in essence, collaborative storytelling. And we use dice to
like randomize?
I guess you could say randomize things of chance.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I've done something very similar with a wrestling game that I made up, and I played that game for like 20 years. It was essentially the same thing. I had match outcomes come out based on a roll of the dice so that you could control who wins what. Storylines aren't just made up and championships change hands. Everything comes back to wrestling.
That sounds super fun. That
sounds super fun, and that sounds like a role-playing game that just revolves around wrestling.
I have played.
Happens to be a role-playing game that revolves around fantasy, and World of Darkness happens to revolve around things that go bump in the night, and Cyberpunk revolves. Well, everybody knows Cyberpunk,
especially because they just released 73, right? 2073.
something like that. Uh,
I still have the box set of the 2013. That is to say, 2013 was the future at the time. So they were originally released in the early 90s, I believe. And I could be wrong. Could be earlier.
No, it was much earlier than that.
Was it?
It was earlier.
87?
Something like that.
Well, you think about Back to the Future was 1985.
Right.
And it
exactly.
had 2015 as the distant future with the flying cars and dehydrated pizzas from Pizza Hut.
Right. Exactly. I have a fun time going back through the Chromebooks. Chromebooks are the kind of like the shopping magazines for cyberpunk players. For their characters. Their characters can buy all kinds of like cybernetics and toys and vehicles and stuff like that. And there are all kinds of like fantastic science. What's the word I'm looking for? Science fiction sort of inspired toys, and I love going through every couple of years I'll go through the Chromebooks looking at like, oh, we did that better. We haven't, where are my holographic tattoos? But with AR, I'm noticing that is becoming more and more likely. So yeah, that is super exciting, watching technology evolve and watching Cyberpunk attempt to reboot. Keanu Reeves is Johnny Silverhand, from what I understand.
Something like that. It's like really sort of.
Okay, that's enough about like Cyberpunk. I could
enough about Cyberpunk, yeah. But there's a whole bunch of different systems, and each one has a different theme to it as far as what the general overarching plot is, for what the game itself is about. And then the game master who runs the game will build a story within the system and present it to the players.
Can you explain? I have heard of homebrew games. Can you explain what a homebrew game would be?
A homebrew game is when a game master essentially creates his world or his system, and like from the ground up.
Oh, okay.
Like I did with my wrestling game, essentially.
Sorry, I have a cat that's messing with things on my wall.
That's unfortunate. I'm curious, what are you currently playing?
Currently, I'm playing 2 Pathfinder games, a Dark Sun game, an Only War game, an Age of Sigmar game.
Is there anything else? I kind of gathered on the Discord server that you were playing around with Godbound.
Yes, I'm also playing Godbound and Soulbound.
Sounds interesting.
And Soulbound is also in the Age of Sigmar universe.
Oh, okay.
So, we've been flirting with Warhammer 40k, but we haven't actually, like, Only War is us kind of stepping into Warhammer 40k.
That's
but
exciting.
we're not. Only War.
No one's actually like committed to it yet.
Nobody's committed to let's Warhammer 40k because Warhammer 40k is silly.
It is over the top, and
it is over the top.
And my husband is a huge fan. He read all the books, he plays all the video games. He's been playing the Talisman version of the game recently on his iPad while he watches lore videos on YouTube. So he is a fan.
There's over 70 books in
And he
one
has
arc.
all of them. And he has all of them.
Holy wow.
That's
The only thing is that he doesn't have like the miniature army.
Ah.
So he's just in it for the lore and the story.
Well, Warhammer 40K doesn't necessarily have the miniature army like Warhammer itself did.
Oh, Warhammer 40K is indeed also
You can have the miniature
tabletop.
army and stuff like that if you're playing at tabletop.
Mm-hmm.
Tabletop Simulator is wonderful, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
It's available on Steam. I think it's like $10. But you can basically get your
miniatures
and stuff like that and build a battle map and stuff like that.
Oh, that sounds fun.
On a virtual tabletop.
It's a virtual tabletop.
It's Tabletop Simulator, and it's actually called Tabletop Simulator. And
oh yeah, they don't even beat around the bush with that.
Like that on there too. It's wonderful.
Where do you tend to play? Which I expect you play on Tabletop Simulator. Most of them, since most of your games are virtual.
Most of my games are virtual. Yes.
And I think the pandemic might have had like a impact with that.
Sorry, I didn't catch it.
It is mail time.
This is my daughter.
Hello, daughter.
Oh, who's that?
Hello.
We are
recording a podcast.
We are recording a podcast.
So, if you have homework, please
I don't have homework.
Go see about your snack then, because Mama is busy.
Hello, the moon.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Now go on, honey.
She is also a horror writer of her own account, so
she is.
I'm super proud.
As am I.
Awesome.
That is my spawn.
So, have you found that? Encouraged by her presence, have you ever found yourself trying to incorporate the family into your gaming?
Not so much her.
Well, I mean,
my
family
husband
in general.
A little bit. But my husband doesn't really play, but he gives a lot of input. He hasn't played in a very long time, but he gives a lot of input because he knows the systems.
Does he give input on like story or like, hey, I think your story should do this?
He gives some input on story, input on which direction a plot should go, on how I should treat a certain situation if I'm a player. And
so he's playing without playing.
Playing without playing.
Yeah. That sounds fun. Having someone to bounce ideas off of is like, what do? Does your RP inspire your art, and how?
Absolutely, it does. Most of my art, the art that I do for me is of my characters in various forms, be it, Art Nouveau or dynamic poses or different outfits or things like that.
Do you ever incorporate the two at the same time? Like bring a piece that you work on that's inspired by the game, like to the other people who are playing with you to illustrate or
Absolutely. I do that all the time. And I just recently shared an Art Nouveau piece I did of my Godbound character.
I would love to show it off if you want to share your screen.
If I want to share my screen, let me open it up real quick.
This is a whole new world for me, and I have one experience while you're working on that, where a buddy of mine had invited me to go hang out with them while they're doing their tabletop D&D or whatever. And admittedly, at the time, and I mean, no offense, that was the absolute most boring thing I've ever done in my entire life. I also wasn't involved, so that's my thing. I was not involved. I was unaware of the story. I didn't know where they were at. Obviously, they didn't take the time to try to include me. I was just sitting over here on basement steps in some weird guy's basement. I'm like, why am I here? And honestly, that particular event was a turnoff for me. But the older I get, the more of my friends that are involved in role-playing games, and I hear about it a lot now with the convention we go to in July. They have a gaming section there, and I haven't really explored it, kind of for these same reasons. But I'm just it's so foreign to me. I just haven't stepped onto that land yet, and now I kind of want to. I don't necessarily want to play per se, but I'm interested in the storytelling element of it, and I'm really, really curious about this character and character development that you got from Godbound.
Godbound kind of is what it sounds like, in that your characters have gained godlike power. And
I can relate to that.
Basically, they need to come into themselves as budding gods.
So like a divine training camp.
Something like that, but there are things that can kill budding gods, so be warned. There are things that can and will kill budding gods, so be warned.
This is your Godbound character. Does she have a name?
Yes.
Is it a she?
It is a she. Her name is Orla. Share screen.
Basically, yep, share screen. And then I have to approve it.
Share.
Active stage. Dun, dun, dun.
So this is the picture that I drew recently of my Godbound character, where she's standing in the snow and stuff like that. It's just in pencil. It's just a raw scan, so I haven't done anything fancy with it. It's inspired by the game itself. It's inspired by her character development, which is, well, she's developed through roleplay, through her interaction with the other characters. And her personality has developed itself, formed, shown itself through her interaction with the other characters, and how she responds to situations, and how she handles the day-to-day, and so on and so forth.
I suspect the day-to-day for Godbound characters would be stressful.
It's a little bit stressful. It gets more stressful as they gain power, because we're not at the point where we can hear prayers yet.
Oh.
But we're at the point where we can have temples and cults and stuff like that.
Mm. So
we just got our first cult.
A benchmark for us all.
A benchmark for us all.
I'm working on my first cult right now. I'm not playing a role-playing game. How much of yourself is in that particular character?
Not terribly much. Enough of myself, the part of me that is bubbly. So,
a bubbly god?
A bubbly god of death. Yes. It's
there's so much you can do with that. I love that. Like a really happy, bubbly, that seems so.
She's a really happy, bubbly god of death. We were comparing our characters to TV tropes, and on this particular website that listed TV tropes, in which I found the trope that best suited her, which was the Pollyanna. It said that her glass is so full that it overflowed into 2 more articles. So I'm like, that's accurate.
You mentioned being a budding fantasy and horror author. What inspired you to get into horror?
Well, I've always enjoyed reading horror. I've always been fascinated with watching horror and experiencing the horror genre,
Oh,
I guess you could say.
Oh, so you play horror games?
I play horror games, and I watch horror movies, and I read horror books, and
Yeah, I get you.
stuff like that. And so there's horror elements in my fantasy writing.
Oh, is that your favorite media, or what's your favorite horror media?
My favorite horror media is probably in books.
Oh, the written word
Is probably the written word. There's so much more you can do with the written word than you can do with cinema.
You think?
I think so.
Depending on the budget, yeah, I can agree with that.
Particularly with the budget.
I get you.
Oh, I was just laughing because I just had that conversation yesterday. I just finished my horror script, my more recent one. Thank you. And as I'm talking to one of the producers about it, he's like, now you know, we don't have the money for all of the different things we're going to do to produce this movie. It's in your script. I'm like, oh, I know. But I wrote my script for me. So what you guys do with it after this, I really don't care. I'll be there, so it's fine. So it's all right.
Oh, okay. So that you are currently in the transition between writer and producer or director.
Yeah, director, producer. I will, yeah.
That's awesome.
You have handed off the script, and they will adapt it to TV or media.
Well, we're gonna produce it. So we have our little group, Hollywood Hills Entertainment, and we're gonna be the ones producing this particular film. And I just sent it off to the director. I emailed it off to the camera guy so he can get shots and such. I'm going to hand it off to the other producer tomorrow, and I only go on into bringing that up because of what you said about how you can do so much more with the written word than you can in actual cinema. There's no bounds when you're writing down horror on tape. You can literally explore anything without having to worry about whether or not the props work, whether or not there's money in the budget for things. So as a writer going and looking into that cinematic form from both angles, I totally agree with her that there's so much more you can do with that written word as opposed to just on film. I assume that's what you meant.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'm like struggling with is trying to make a monster. Like I've described the monster and stuff, but I'm trying to make the monster more than it's kind of gross.
Are you trying to draw more horror than gore? Or are you trying to make it more terrifying psychologically than just physically? Like how?
I'm trying to make it something that the reader will go, ooh, in reading the description of it.
Do you, since you're an artist, because I am absolutely not one. Do you ever like use your artistic skills to visualize the creatures in your mind so that you can have a better way of describing them?
I have, yes.
Does that help?
It does.
Explains my downfall.
I've described it. It's just
You wonder if it actually meets the bar.
I don't think it meets the bar for you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you want like a or like a ah?
More like a
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Triple chin.
triple chin.
I have those on a regular day. That's why the beard stays.
Excellent.
Okay, moving right along.
Do you have anything like in writing, like complete? Anything you want to tell us about, or share an idea or concept with us?
Nothing that's complete, but I do have a story that I'm working on currently that revolves around a Pathfinder character that I have played for the past 6 years. That happens to be a human bard that has just exploded in fame, and all sorts of wonderful things have happened to her, and fantastical things have happened to her over the course of the game, which has run for like 6 years.
Does that happen often? Long games like that?
Often, no. It takes a special sort to find that kind of synergy, you know?
Oh, so the game is only as good as the people playing it?
The game is only as good as the people playing it, the people running it, it's half about the friends you make along the way. And
yeah, an excuse to kind of hang out with your friends and also write a story with them.
It is a very social thing, and it's collaborative storytelling with your friends from the point of view of a particular character that you've created.
So the GM is
the storyteller that creates the setting and the situation that your characters are in.
The conflict.
Kind of like the movie Vantage Point, where everyone's kind of experiencing the same thing, but the movie I thought was done amazingly. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Vantage Point, but there's an incident, like a domestic terrorism kind of thing, some kind of explosion, some kind of thing happens, and there's like this person in the news truck, this person in politics, and this person off to the side, and the whole movie is just kind of retelling the same event from the viewpoint of the different people that were in the area from different vantage points of the same situation.
I'll have to look into that.
More of an action movie than a horror movie, but it's still pretty good. So I guess that's kind of the viewpoint of a tabletop, a role-playing game. You're just going through the same thing. Each person is looking at the same situation from a different vantage point.
Basically. And oftentimes you're in a party together and you're working as a team.
Are there chances or games that actually have conflict between the players?
Oh, of course. That's bound to happen sometimes, that there's player conflict.
Oh, you mean like not necessarily character to character, but player to player. Maybe sometimes there's...
That certainly has happened, particularly with online games when you're, say, picking up a game on a forum and, joining a game with people you don't know, that you have conflict with another player. And that's happened. I've met a couple of toxic people in the community.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. Of course, there's character conflict, which is money. But character conflict can be a lot of fun to role play. Player conflict, not so much fun.
So that's where the dice come in, for the most part. Is that right? A neutral way for character to character to handle whatever dispute they find themselves in the midst of.
If the dispute comes to blows or something like that, yes.
Are there ever situational things that just get resolved? Maybe not so much like a physical interaction, like coming to blows, but are there ever situations that get determined with the dice rolls?
Say they're having an archery competition, or they're seeing who can make the better potion, or they're seeing who can bake the tastier pie, or
Apple.
something like that. That can be determined with the roll of the dice.
How do you tell when to roll the dice and when to just make stuff up as you go?
One thing to keep in mind always is the rule of cool. If it seems like this just needs to happen,
Oh, okay.
then it happens.
Okay.
If this doesn't necessarily need to happen, it'd be kind of cool if it did. But it doesn't necessarily need to happen. Let's do it.
So you would roll the dice to decide, like, A, whether to roll the dice regarding the event, and then B, do you want to randomize how the event goes, or do you want the ending that you're premeditating?
Yeah. If you premeditate, now I tend to advise to any GM to not premeditate your ending, or to only premeditate your ending to a small degree, because if there's one thing that I have learned over definitely more than 25 years as what's commonly known as a forever GM, I have learned that players will invariably in a game turn left. And what that means is you have this plot. You have this plan of there's this thing here, and this thing here, and this thing here, and this thing here, and this plot point happens at this time, and this plot point happens at this time, and this point happens at this time, and the player's like, I'm gonna go over here.
So authors often have characters that will demand different endings in the story. And I guess player characters also do this practice.
Yes.
So some planning as a GM, like how do you balance randomity with planning?
How do you balance randomity with planning? It really is a balancing act, that's for sure.
As a GM myself, I have like bullet points that each game I have bullet points that I want to accomplish, and how they get to those bullet points is completely up to them.
What I tend to do is, when particularly I take a world that exists and I add a little homebrew spin on it, in that I take a major piece of history and I change it. And then that changes, and I change whatever that changes in the future. Things like that.
Okay, so you do a what if.
I do a what if. Like in the Forgotten Realms campaign world, I replaced a major political power. And that alters the world stage drastically because it changes the path of war over history and things like that.
So at what, like, what's the scale of your average game? Like, is it, do you have like these massive meta plots, or is it just like chapter to chapter?
My games, all of my games were pretty grand scale with the massive meta plots and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've come to enjoy a bit of both. Though the game I can really sink my teeth into with the massive meta plots and the big, overarching themes and things like that, where you can really get invested in your character and really get invested in the setting and things like that. That scratches an itch. So
Does that mean that when if your character dies, like, is it like, like losing a friend, or?
not exactly.
I have known a couple of players get very upset if their character passed away.
I tend to get pretty upset, but it is not as...
It's more like hitting the game over screen on a video game?
It is in between hitting the game over screen on a video game and losing a friend. It's in between the two.
Oh, okay. So, okay, I get it.
So it's
In
more
terms
like
of the finality.
it's a piece of finality, and it's an emotional thing, but it's nothing that you grieve.
Oh, okay. Kind of like writing a death in a novel?
It's kind of like writing a death in a novel of a character that you've grown to love.
Mm-hmm.
When a beloved character dies in the third part.
Mm-hmm. When a beloved character dies in the third part.
Or if you watch Scream, it's like the death of Dewey.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your favorite horror media?
I think we asked that already, and I think I said books because you can do anything with books.
Is there a book in particular that you
Recommend? I'll take it.
recommend? Yeah.
I think as far as horror books that have stuck with me over the years, I would probably say The Stand by
Oh, that's a
Stephen King.
tome. Yeah, that's a thick one.
It's a thick one, but it's amazing, and it's very well written. It's debatably, and according to Stephen King, probably his best book.
Oh.
Stephen King believes it's his best book, and I think it's his best book too.
I haven't actually sat and read King. I've watched a lot of King adaptations, but I've never actually sat and read King. Books this thick, I didn't read in high school. I wasn't going, like textbooks. I wasn't going to read, but maybe one day I might just sit down and really read it. So, as someone who doesn't read King, for example, if The Stand is his best work, should I start with The Stand or save it for last?
If you don't intend to read a lot of King, read The Stand. At least read The Stand. Like, if you don't intend to read a lot of King, read The Stand and read The Green Mile, and that's it.
Noted.
If you do intend to read a lot of King, save them.
Gotcha. Sako, do you have a favorite horror book?
Sunglasses After Dark by Nancy Collins. It's a vampire book, and kind of inspired my fascination with vampires. And Nancy Collins actually became a writer for World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade specifically, and fit the character in that system, and wrote books for Onyx Publishing, White Wolf Publishing, etc. I don't know. Like, there are aspects about the World of Darkness that I super love, but there are certain things that I feel like she did better.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding lore and what kind of villains you would go against if the protagonist is a vampire, and what motivates a vampire besides blood. Like, I'm sure there are other motivations for vampires other than just existence.
Humans
pretty
have
big
more
one, though.
motivation than food.
I mean, it would be a pretty big one, though. I mean, I think so.
Food is a pretty big motivation.
It's
But
my biggest motivation. You can get me to do almost anything with the right amount of food offered. Almost. You'll see my emails just blowing up now. No, almost anything. Outside of the art, outside of the role-playing games, outside of the writing, what else do you do?
what else do I do? Aside
What else
from
makes you smile? What else makes you smile?
oh man, I've got this 10-year-old little girl that is the center of my universe, and it's fantastic.
I have read some of her horror stories. She plays horror games that I can't play.
Yeah.
Because they're so scary.
She really likes the really tense ones. And
she has more guts than I do.
They haven't lived life yet.
She likes the really tense ones, and I understand why Sako's like
there are certain games that she like, Five Nights at Freddy's, right? That dread that Five Nights at Freddy's actually bestows upon you is unmatched. Like, kind of like waiting for the toast to pop, and then you're like paying so much attention to it, and then it actually pops and it scares the piss out of you.
It's the biscuits.
It's the biscuits.
It's the biscuits.
I like getting I have a 10-year-old not into horror, but I like to get him with the biscuits. It's one of those things where it's like, go ahead, just go ahead and open the biscuits for me. Just start right there, peel the paper. It'll open eventually. It's like the cheap Jack in the Box. It's just like
the biscuits.
Am I the only one that's got that song that came out like a couple months ago that went viral? I'm not going to sing it, but it's
no, please don't.
Oh, well, not. That is not something that we want on the show. I will cancel this myself. But it's like the older lady and the older guy. They're like in a clothing store, and she's talking about biscuits and the honey sauce.
Mm-hmm.
That's playing in my head now that I've talked about the biscuits.
I see.
Taste the biscuit. Taste the goodness of the biscuit. Taste the honey sauce. Taste the goodness of the biscuit with the honey sauce. Don't get that honey sauce on me. I don't like the way it tastes with my chicken wings.
I do not know this song.
You know what? Part of me is super curious, and so I would be like, you know what? As soon as this ends, just go taste the biscuit and just search for taste the biscuit. And whatever video you find with like two older people in the middle of the store, watch that, and then I'll apologize when you're done. Having exposed that.
She will send you her therapy bill.
That's correct. I will not pay it, but I will feel bad about having encouraged it.
Excellent. So, character creation, right? That is like a prominent skill in RPing, I assume. And how do you go about coming up with your concepts?
Well, these days I go with something I haven't done before, or very particularly, I've also taken to playing the bit characters from other characters' backstories.
Oh, that's fun.
Because I've had a lot of fun playing the bit characters from other characters' backstories. I'm just like, oh, I've mentioned my mother and this one, his mother, and this one, this journal entry, and this journal entry, and this journal entry, and this journal entry. I suppose I ought to figure out who his mother is, so I'll create his mother. And I'll play his mother for a little while. I really like his mother.
Okay, how does that character creation in a role-playing game impact your character creation in your writing?
It works about the same way.
Are there certain elements that you focus on more or less for each medium?
I think I take some time to consider mechanics when I'm building a character for a game.
Mechanics. So there's like a formula that you follow when creating
Sometimes
a character?
for things that are, dice dependent, you wanna succeed as much as possible. So you wanna set yourself up to succeed as much as possible. So if you can set yourself up to succeed, then great. I would say light optimization.
As
Not
opposed to like God moding or
as opposed to like God moding or super optimization.
optimization.
I am not a super optimizer.
What is a super optimizer?
A person who twinks the rules to the point where they make the game seem unfair.
That's my son.
Unfair in their favor.
That's my son. He loves to do that. Play a game and every time he thinks he's about to lose, all of a sudden there's a certain tweak he has to make. I'm like, I don't know. Don't do that to your little brother. Don't do that. So do you run into that a lot in the games that you play?
Twinks? Often enough. But I don't really, at least at the point I'm at now, I mostly play with my favorite people. So I don't play with twinks.
Oh, okay.
I have a Discord server that I have used to collect my favorite people over the years. So it's a private server where everybody in it, is somebody that I've handpicked, to be in the server because I want them there because they're fun to have around. Because I was in a couple of servers that were kind of lame, and I'm like, well, fine, I'm going to make my own server with hookers and blackjack. So I made my own server with hookers and blackjack.
That sounds like my kind of server.
And
who doesn't love hookers and blackjack?
Who doesn't love
that should have been the name of the show, Hookers and Blackjack.
That's the name for our audience, is our hookers and blackjack.
That's it. We're going to do like Hookers and Blackjacks. Welcome to Sako and the Moon.
Hookers and Blackjack. That'll do.
That's super fun.
Now I need hooker and blackjack t-shirts.
But I've been cherry picking my D&D games out of that group for.
So you have a master, kind of like a master group.
A master group.
Where you can write the story with these people and it'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. I tend to go for either writers or actors, or like theater kids,
Yeah.
because they will slip right into that role and, do the heck out of it. And writers are also more likely to be willing to randomize the chances as opposed, and like they have stats and stuff like that will alter the chances of success.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
the difference between what I do and optimizing is basically I will follow a path to if I'm building a glass cannon, I will glass cannon the shit out of that glass cannon.
Oh, okay.
If you pardon my language.
Go with it. We're
Um,
all grown here.
We don't have the FCC like hounding us for curse
Okay.
words and stuff like that.
Fuck them.
If I'm building a tank, I will
Okay,
sword
so
and board guy, and so on and so forth.
oh, okay. So you optimize your concept and bend the system to work for your character?
To work for my character, but I will invest in role play rather than completely investing in how great can I be.
So I suppose there are some people who rule mongers who use the system to their benefit in such a way that it breaks the system.
Something like that.
I was going to ask, how do you have that balance in your characters where you're applying and attributing positives, but how do you fairly distribute the negatives? You can't just be super awesome without having some kind of flaw. Like, is that standard in the process? Is there a formula that determines that?
It is possible to build super awesome without the negatives, but I don't do that. I will always build a flaw in there. I will always build, like, pretty much all my female characters can cook. There's no combat use for cooking. But they can cook.
And
they have a hobby.
They have a hobby.
They have some crafting skill, like they can sew, or they weave,
This is
or
the
they play
formula
the
that you set up.
or insert role-playing skill here.
So this is just so they have something else to do when they're not battling?
When they're not battling, something else to do when they're not battling, something they can do that can earn money, maybe. Something they can do that has a job. Have a job.
Clark Kent does still have a day job.
Mm-hmm.
Clark Kent does have a day job.
Because, heaven forbid you have a month of downtime. I'm like,
downtime?
Screw it. I'm going to go get a job and make some money. Downtime.
That could be a whole game. I'd play that.
A whole game. Oh God, that would just be a like game.
Normality. The game of normality. Just going through regular life with these particular situations and stats and peoples and characters, and you're just going through that month of downtime. It's like, what do I do now? Your car is busted. How do you get to work? Roll for bus pass.
That would be a very mundane game. Yes.
Yes.
I'd play it. It's coming from the guy who doesn't play. So I'm like, anything that's close to my real life, yeah, I guess I can do that.
I like World of Darkness because it is the world that we live in, but there are vampires and werewolves and changelings and all kinds of,
things that go bump in the night.
Yes, which are, of course, live in secret, right? So you get to know all these secret societies and stuff like that of supernatural creatures that exist, like at the bus stop on 12th and Emeryville or whatever.
Roll for bus pass.
Roll for bus. Okay. Well, we have reached the top of the hour. So, Kyri, if you have anything you want to promo or kind of direct them to a website or anything like that, now is the time for that.
Well, not at this time. I don't have any websites that are ready for promo or things like that. But I'm going to say thanks for watching and thanks for listening to us prattle. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've been a joy. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
It was a pleasure meeting you. If you like this video at any point, I encourage you to hit the like button. And if you want to see more, podcasts like this one, you can usually find us on Sundays, posting to YouTube and most other podcasty locations as well. And you might want to subscribe and maybe even ring that bell on the off chance that YouTube actually notifies you when we go live. And I've been Sako&theMoon. I wear all the hats, and
that's Sako. She wears all the hats. I'm the moon. I only wear this one.
And we will catch you on the flip side.